Hello and welcome to Pock and Rob. I really wanted to get this video out this week as earlier last week The Great Western Road by Deacon Blue was released. I am going to therefore do my ranking of the 11 studio albums of Deacon Blue. Before I go in and do that, I would remind you to subscribe if you haven't already done so, to click the thumbs up to like the video, the bell for notifications of future content, and share the video with someone else. And I'm going to take a slightly different tack in this ranking, in that I am going to mention each of the albums in the order in which they were released, and then say where I think they fit on a ranking as I go along. So kicking off with 1987's Raintown, cited by most as their greatest album. Certainly cited by many as having their greatest song, which is Dignity. It got them the recording contract. But there were 4 singles released from this, all 4 of which are terrific. When You Make My Telephone Ring was released twice, as was Dignity. Then also we had Loaded released, that was their second single, and then finally Chocolate Girl was released, and that's probably my favourite track off this album. This album also contains Love's Great Fears and This Town to Be Blamed and Raintown, which is an absolutely wonderful track. Which, just before it, you've got this tiny little track, Born in a Storm. It's a really, really good album, and obviously, as it's the first release, it's currently sitting in the number 1 position. Next up, in 1989, they released When the World Knows Your Name, trailed by the single Real Gone Kid, which hit the top 10. All of a sudden, Deacon Blue were a band to take notice of. This was proven by the fact that When the World Knows Your Name shot to number 1, knocking Like a Prayer by Madonna off the top spot. It's a great pop album. They released loads of singles from this. Queen of the New Year from here, Love and Regret, Wages Day, the aforementioned Real Gone Kid, and Fergus Sings the Blues. Fergus Sings the Blues was my entry point to Deacon Blue. But Fergus Sings the Blues I heard on the radio, and I thought, this song's a banger, and I still do. But yeah, Circus Lights, absolutely wonderful song. I love 100 Things and Silhouettes and Orphans, and unlike many, I place this as a better album than Raintown, and therefore it's leaping into the number 1 spot. So the reason I'm doing this ranking in this way is because virtually every Deacon Blue fan will have those 2 albums at the top, so there's very little surprise. 1991 saw the release of their 3rd album, Fellow Hoodlums. This got to number 2 in the charts. They were trying to get a different feel than they'd had for When the World Knows Your Name, which was highly poppy by the production. So they went back to John Kelly, who produced their first album. They were trying to recapture that feel, and as a result, I think in Fellow Hoodlums there's their first misstep on a record, and that is Closing Time. Closing Time is a poor song. However, there's a top 10 single on here, which is Twist and Shout, which is just fun pop fluff. There's other great songs on here. Cover from the Sky, which sees Lorraine McIntosh taking the lead vocal, and they released that as a single too. I remember my friends and I, who were into Deacon Blue at the time, thinking, why did they release that? And then 3 or 4 years later, as they were breaking up, we went to go and see them live, and Lorraine sang Cover from the Sky, and it was magnificent, and I have loved the song ever since. Other tracks on here like The Wildness, the beautiful opener, James Joyce Souls, downbeat for sure. You've got Fellow Hoodlums, which is an odd track, The Day That Jackie Went to Jail, which is a really odd track, and A Brighter Star Than You Will Shine, and One Day I'll Go Walking. And it's not a perfect album by any stretch. It is a step down from the first 2. Although for many years I used to cite Fellow Hoodlums as my favourite Deacon Blue album. However, at the moment it's sitting at number 3 behind the first 2. Now we come to 1993 and the release of Whatever You Say, Say Nothing. So I was super stoked for this album, trailed as it was by the Your Town single, which is an incredible piece of music. Your Town, however, could be sued for misrepresentation, because whatever you say, say nothing, I have long said is my least favourite Deacon Blue album. It has Cut Lip on it, which I detest. Now, if I didn't like Closing Time from fellow hoodlums, I thoroughly hated Cut Lip. The second single, Will We Be Lovers, it just doesn't go anywhere. It sounds like it's going to break out into something, and it just completely fails to do so. Only Tender Love was the third single, which was good-ish, but not great. It sounds like they were trying to be U2. And we're talking U2 of the Achtung Baby era. And even the image was trying to do that. The influence of dance music of the time is written all over this album, which I've never warmed to. But apart from Your Town, the album does have one shining redeeming feature, and it's Bethlehem's Gate. That song makes this album worth owning because it's terrific. More Bethlehem's Gate and this would be way, way higher. But, as I've already trailed, I've long said it's my least favourite Deacon Blue album. It's currently in 4th spot. The band split. They released a greatest hits album, which shot to number 1 and sold bucket loads. And then in '99, something odd happened. They kind of almost, but didn't quite, maybe did, got back together and released an album called Walking Back Home. Now, this is not in the ranking for one reason. It's a long old album. I think there's 17 tracks on it, half of which are previously released compilation, effectively. As a result, I'm not including it. However, in 2001, they did release a brand new studio album, Homesick. I remember buying Homesick. I remember going and seeing them on the tour. I remember really liking Homesick. But in all honesty, I had not put this album on probably for a decade. And in preparation for this video, I decided to re-listen to it. Silver Lake is great. This Train Will Take You Anywhere is terrific. But I came to the conclusion that I found more to enjoy on Whatever You Say, Say Nothing than I did on my re-listen to Homesick. The presence of Your Town and Bethlehem's Gate just nudge Whatever You Say, Say Nothing ahead of Homesick. And Homesick is sitting at the bottom of the ranking at number 5. We fast forward into the 2010s now. So they came back with The Hipsters. This is an album that is full of energy and invention and excitement. The title track, The Hipsters, is a banger. It gets stuck in my head. Turn is terrific stuff. Laura from Memory. It has a slow start, as a lot of Deacon Blue albums do, with Here I Am in London Town. And there's The Rest, a track which he kind of trailed in the fact that there is a compilation called The Rest that came out as part of that reissue campaign. The Hipsters was a triumphant return, and I think it's a really good album, and at the moment I am placing it as being better than fellow hoodlums. It's therefore sitting pretty in the number 3 spot. They didn't rest on their laurels, and 1 year later, in 2014, all of a sudden there was another Deacon Blue album, A New House. And for me, A New House is even better than The Hipsters. I imagine at this point that the band and their 2 new members were kind of gelling and getting into their stride. So on here we've got the title track, A New House. Bethlehem Begins. March and Wild are both energetic pounders of songs of the type that was all over When the World Knows Your Name. And as a result, that's probably why I hold A New House in so much affection. It reminds me of the excitement of When the World Knows Your Name, of Queen of the New Year, of Real Gone Kid, Wages Day, and Fergus Sings the Blues in particular. It's a great album, and as a result, I am placing it slightly above The Hipsters, so this now takes position number 3. They keep going. In 2016, they released Believers, an album that I have struggled to get into until very recently. But the Believers I've grown to really warm to. There's not a lot on here that I think massively stands out to me. But I would cite This Is a Love Song and I Will and I Won't alongside Birds. And for me, I don't think the energy levels... This is almost like the fellow hoodlums of the first Return 3 Albums trilogy, because it's downbeat in comparison, but it's still solid stuff. I am placing it a little bit lower than fellow hoodlums, and so this is going into slot number 6. We moved to 2020, and just before the pandemic hit, right at the start of March, Deacon Blue released City of Love. As an album, it's solid but not remarkable. I've struggled to warm to City of Love in the same way that I did with Believers, but without the same level of kind of like blinding revelation when I listened to it this week. It does kick off with a really good 1, 2, 3 track of the title track, Hit Me Where It Hurts and Weight of the World. But it does have one of those odd tracks right at the end that Deacon Blue occasionally added in. You know, the things like I said, The Day That Jackie Jumped the Jail is really odd. It's a bit like that, which is On Love, and it's a spoken word thing with a chorus. I like it enough, and there's nothing on here that I think is a misstep of the stuff that I've spoken of in Homesick or Whatever You Say, Say Nothing, or indeed Fellow Hoodlums. But there's nothing stratospherically wonderful like there is Your Swaying Arms or Your Town or Bethlehem's Gate. That said, it's still better than both Whatever You Say, Say Nothing and Homesick, but it's not as good as Believers. So it is going to go into position number 7. So the aforementioned pandemic means that we then got a short album, Riding on the Tide of Love, comprised of 3 tracks from the City of Love sessions and 5 new ones that they recorded in isolation. The title track is fantastic. It has She Loved the Snow, which is a really pleasant little song, and it's short enough that it doesn't outstay its welcome. I would actually... I toy with whether or not I think this is better than City of Love or whether I don't think it's quite as good, but it's most definitely a companion piece. They are 2 of a pair, and they really do fit together as... But if they had come out as a double album, you'd have said that it was thematically linked and it was whole. I'm placing it just below City of Love, currently in position 8. But is that all going to change by the positioning of the Great Western Road? So at this point, I'm going to review the Great Western Road. It kicks off slowly with the title track, The Great Western Road. It's almost soporific. But that's not unusual for a Deacon Blue record. They did that with Born in the Storm. They did it with James Joyce's Souls. But the second track is Late 88, which was released as a single last year. Late 88 was when Real Gone Kid hit the top 10. And there is no question in my mind that song's about. That's what Late 88 is about. It's about the sudden success that they were enjoying. It's got an energy level that mirrors stuff like Real Gone Kid. The same level of energy is maintained in People Come First. And listening to that track, it's the best bass that I remember hearing on a Deacon Blue album since the days of You and Vernal. Wait on Me evokes the Las Vegas era, has a real feel about it. And I would say that from the 80s period, that would have been a superior Deacon Blue B-side. We then have Ashore, which to me is every bit as an equal of the tracks on A New House. Turn Up Your Radio is good. How We Remember It, that comes to mind, the best of the Raintown era ballads to me. Mid-Century Modern is an excellent track. Curve of the Line I really like. I particularly like Lorraine's vocals on this. And all in all, it's actually, for me, right in the middle of the pack. It's a good Reformation era Deacon Blue album. And to be honest, they haven't released a bad Reformation era album. They just haven't really, in my opinion, released an absolutely phenomenal record, like their first two. Great Western Road, sitting at number 7. So to conclude, I am going to run down the top 11. And at number 11, Homesick. Number 10, Whatever You Say, Say Nothing. Number 9, Riding on the Tide of Love. Number 8, its parent album, City of Love. Number 7, The Great Western Road. 6 is The Believers. 5, Fellow Hoodlums. 4, Hipsters. 3, A New House. And then way out in front, at number 2, Raintown. And at number 1, When the World Knows Your Name. So that concludes my ranking of the 11 studio albums of Deacon Blue. And I will be doing some more Deacon Blue content on the channel in future. I will do my Tracks of My Ears at some point, but I was holding back on that to wait until I'd done the album ranking. Before I go, I'd remind you to subscribe, like, hit the bell. I'll be back soon with another video, but until then, thanks for watching.